live with Coach RT3, and this week we've got Rik Brown, Mr. Maceman himself, coming on with us, and he's gonna drop some knowledge on Mace Swinging. So we'll just wait here for Rik to show up, and then we'll add him to the screencast, and you'll be able to see his lovely face.
Oh yeah. There we go.
Yeah.
There we go. How you doing, Rik?
I'm doing wonderful. Doing wonderful.
Awesome.
Older and wiser from yesterday. I know how to work. I know how to work some of this technology a little better. It was all my fault, everybody.
That's all right. Technical difficulties we had yesterday. It's probably a good thing because I've been suffering from some serious allergies. We've had some sunshine up here, and the weather's changed, and I couldn't even speak on Tuesday, so I completely lost my voice altogether. And today I was suffering from a raging congestion headache from all that stuff. So, but the show must go on, right? Because all these people are so interested in what you have to say, I'm sure.
I hope so.
Well, I'm really glad to have you on. It's the 6th episode, and we've talked to some great people, and you're definitely one of those great people in the unconventional world of fitness. And I want to just give the people an opportunity to get to know who you are and find out a little bit about what it is you do and your background. And so let's just jump right in and start with, just tell us the story of Rik. How did Rik come to be? Where you from? How did you get going into fitness?
Well, I'm from Southern California. Lived here all my life in the greater Los Angeles area. Now I'm in Orange County. And I've always been passionately interested in exercise, in training. And that led me as an early teenager, and we're talking in the 70s, to attempt bodybuilding, because that was what we were told. That's what the magazines told us, was that muscle and muscle size and development is the barometer of athletic excellence in what we want. And interesting little thing, when I was very, very young, about 11 or 12, I used to watch professional wrestling. And I saw these muscular, tanned skinned athletes, and I just assumed they were a different race. They all looked about the same. They were all dark skinned, different hues of brown, and they all had these huge deltoids and these wide flaring lats. And I decided that if I could come back in another lifetime, that's what I would do, And I remember my older brother telling me, he said, well, no, they're not a different race. They're any race, but they lift weights. That's what they do. And my dad said, yeah, that's what they do. So my brother had a weight set, and he went off to fight in Vietnam. And thank goodness he came back. But he went to Vietnam. He gave me his weight set. I started at about 12 years old, doing the two things that I thought would get me ahead. I started lifting weights, and by reading the muscle magazines, and I started learning to speak Spanish so that I could talk to 90% of the wrestlers that I saw. One in particular was I was fascinated with this guy. His name was Mil Máscaras, and which in Spanish means 1,000 masks. And every time he wrestled, he had a different mask on. And they interviewed him, and he always spoke Spanish. And I thought, okay, I'm going to go down to the auditorium. I'm going to find a way to meet him. And it's not that hard, They're waiting to go into the ring and wrestle. And mind you, this is like 1970, 71 or something. And I'm just almost a teenager, and so I finally get to see Mil Máscaras in the auditorium. And I was a little put off that I was the same height he was, and I'm 12 years old.
You're a pretty big dude, though.
Well, yeah, okay, and he was pretty small, but short, I should say, but he was as wide as a refrigerator. And I went up to him and I told him in Spanish that he was my idol. I wanted to be like him, and can he show me or tell me something about lifting weights to get bigger? And it was so funny. He put his arm around my shoulder and he said, "Kid, do you want to speak Spanish or do you want to speak English? Because I can speak English too." And I said, "Really, really?" And his English wasn't great, but it was good. You know, he's been around the world. He spoke German and Japanese as well. I mean, it was how naive of me. But anyway, fast forward to that. Uh, Mid 70s. Okay, I'm going to be a bodybuilder. Go to Gold's Gym once a week, and basically harass anybody that would talk to me. You know, how do I do this? How do I do this? How do I do this? And it frustrated me, Rich. It frustrated me because I trained harder than anybody I knew. And I did get stronger, although leverage really worked against me, but I never, ever looked like those
Mm-hmm.
guys. And I wasn't willing to, to take any kind of
Right.
pharmaceuticals or anything like that. But there were guys that I knew that I don't think they took pharmaceuticals, but they looked a lot better than I did. They had a better frame, a better setup. And when I was about 19, I started training at a Mr. Universe's gym in Pasadena, five-time Mr. Universe Bill Pearl. I was 18 or 19, maybe 20, and he was 52. And an interesting thing that he did one day, I had read that he could do press behind necks with 320 pounds in his prime.
Wow.
Now mind you, he's 52. Well, I was doing squats with about 315, which was darn near my max. And I jokingly said, "Hey, this is 315. Do you think you could press it behind your neck?" And he said, and it was early in the morning. He said, "I don't know." And he went over and he picked it up and he pushed it up about as high as his ears, maybe a little higher. And then he let it down. He goes, "No, I can't do it." Uh, I'd never seen anyone do that kind of strength. And this was a 52-year-old man. No warm up, nothing. You know, if I'd have taken 10 pounds off that, Rich, he would have got it. I was just, I realized that, okay, I just don't have it for this. But then, uh, after all those frustrating years, I found out around the turn of the 2000, the year 2000, fast forward, I'm now into my 40s, but still 20 years of frustrating bodybuilding experience. And anybody could go on my Instagram page at Mr Maceman, and they can scroll back far enough, and they can see a picture of me when I was 18, and I was at my absolute best physique. Still wasn't good enough, and you'll see why I chose to go to unconventional training, because I found out that anybody could improve, and probably greatly if they put the effort in. Putting the effort in was not a problem, um, and that it didn't matter your skin tone or lack thereof. Okay, I'm the only guy in California that doesn't have a tan. Other than my good friend Eric Doyle, we have white offs frequently, but just like bodybuilders have tan competition, he and I have white offs. But uh, uh, it doesn't matter for unconventional training that you have long levers and poor leverage to lift with. It doesn't matter that you have a big head and big joints so that your muscle bellies look smaller. It doesn't matter. Do you get the weight to move? Do you move with it? That's what matters. And I said, I'm in. I'm in. I had at one time a very, very well equipped home gym around the year 2000. I mean, extremely well equipped. And I was in a lovely house that had a pool that you could see the pool if I opened up the garage door. The pool in the backyard the lights would shine and police would drive by and stop and just look. And but I sold all of that once I found out about kettlebells. Once I found out about what they could do, I sold all that stuff. And back then, 2005, in order to be kettlebell certified, you had to fly to Minnesota
Mm-hmm.
because the RKC was the only game in
Mm-hmm.
town. And I did that. I bought the hotel, bought the plane flight, paid the incredible amount of money back then. And that's another point, Rich, that I want to touch on. You know, I hear people say, uh, you know, uh, when they talk about, how much it costs to come to a seminar or a workshop. I paid $2,000 I paid $1,800 plus travel, plus
Yeah,
hotel.
yeah,
And I never at any time felt that I had to work another job to get that money, but I never felt that it was overpriced. I felt that I got what I wanted. I had training for 3 days right next to Pavel Tsatsu line. I thought it was worth it for
right,
me. I mean, I went home and I was different. I had 5 or 6 kettlebells, and I remember I told my girlfriend, now my wife, I said, I am going to make this work. I'm going to make this blow up. And living in Southern California, very kettlebell dense, a middle-aged trainer was not going to do
right.
it. I tried really hard. I even did had a company went with me, and they produced a full-scale instructional DVD. And it was funny when they told me that they wanted to do this instructional DVD. I said, "Well, who are you going to get to star in it?" I'm thinking of all the local guys, and they said, "You." I said, "Me? Wow, my goodness." That DVD is now on YouTube, broken up. It's all for free in chapters. But what happened from that DVD is, I did a chapter on the snatch, the clean, the press, and all that. But the last chapter was an open workout, and I showed heavy clubs. I showed pulling a sled and different kettlebell moves. But one thing that got a lot of people's interest was I had the guy swing a 10-kilogram
Mm,
mace. And people had seen kettlebells, but everybody asked about the
right.
mace. And I was quite astonished. I mean, I loved the mace from the first time I tried it. I loved it even before I tried it. I knew I would love it. But when they started asking and asking and asking, I said, okay, kettlebell man. And my original logo was this Liberty strength training. It was a Statue of Liberty lifting a
Hmm.
kettlebell. Um, I said, we're going to have to become Mr. Maceman
Yeah,
now. And that started the change.
nice.
I still lift kettlebells and I still love them, but it's the mace that's taken me around the world.
There was a few interesting nuggets in there that I kind of want to touch on as well, and that's the one thing was the middle-aged man point, um, because that's kind of interesting, talking about like how um, the perception, I guess, of being at a middle age and selling something or trying to sell something within the fitness industry is somewhat harder, regardless of the fact that you may have the knowledge. Well, of course, if you've been in the game for 20 years or so, you have a depth and a wealth of knowledge in the subject. Um, but you know, how was that as far as at that time? Because I know for me, thinking back to those days and watching what I was looking at, I was looking in muscle and fitness, I was looking in all these different things, and I was like you, I was playing football in the 90s, early 90s, and then going to college in the mid 90s, and I was in Southern California right there with you, and it was the beach body, it was the bodybuilder style thing. Everything was about bodybuilding. So you know how did you manage to, I know the mace is kind of where you ended up going, but how did you manage to continue to press on, being that middle-aged guy that you felt didn't have the I guess the same pull as say the more youthful coach and trainer?
Well, one thing that helped me is I remember one of the times I had gone to several RKCs. You go, and if you pass and you become a kettlebell guy, if you're good, they'll ask you back as an assistant instructor. And they asked me back a few times. And I remember one time sitting down in the grass in a little circle with a little conference of the assistants and the leaders, and I'm seated right next to Pavel Tsatsu line. And at the time, I've got like an 18.5-inch arm, and it's dangling right next to his, and his arm looked like. I mean, I told him, I said, "You got a string hanging from your sleeve." "Oh my God, that's your arm," and he didn't think it was funny, but but his little stringy arm, I quickly came to realize was far superior to my big bloated sausage of an arm. I stopped trying to be muscular after that. I never again, that was a rude graphic awakening for me. I never, ever looked back. I said, I want conditioning, I want good strength, I want extreme durability, and I don't care if I have a bicep peak or ripped triceps
Right.
or anything. Hey, God bless those of us who can pull them both
Right.
off. Sean Powers, our friend, he's got the best of both worlds, okay, and he walks the walk and talks the talk, but I'm not set up like that. So you have to go to your strength, and my strength has always been that I'll put in the time and I'll do the work. So what happened was I started first with kettlebells, and then it was even easier with the mace when I started asking people in gyms. The first question, what do you always hear? How heavy is that
Right.
thing? And when you tell them 15, 20, 25 pounds, they're like, you know. And then I say, then I throw a challenge out. I could do more with one hand than you can with two. And, the things that we do, Rich, the different types of unconventional training, if you don't do it, you can't
Right.
do it. At least not until you've had a break in. There's no one who's just going to be a first time kettlebell guy and he's going to snatch a 106 pounder, for 10 reps. It's just not going to happen. Not a first
Right.
timer. A first timer's not going to pick up a 45-pound mace and swing it for 3 minutes. It's just not going to happen. Okay, I don't care what level you are at anything else. Okay, and I know this is going online, so someone's going to say, well, so and so did it. Okay, right, yeah. Yao Ming is 7'5", but your average Chinese guy isn't. So let's play with our numbers here, and let's be
Right.
practical. So what I did was I started to use my age as an advantage, um, and I started to ask people if they could do this particular move or whatever. And I said, "Do you think your father could do it? Because he's probably went to high school with me." And that would generally open their eyes that okay, maybe the guy's got
Yeah.
something. You know, because I sure didn't have the yard wide shoulders and the narrow waist. I sure didn't have the Sean Powers look. I would have loved it. I still envy that, but I'm wise enough to know that it's not going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing. Like from my perspective too, is I've definitely changed as from that bodybuilding style of wanting to have certain type of musculature to like now actually just I want to move well, feel well, and be able to do the things that I enjoy. And one of those things is swinging the mace. And so most of my accessory work that I do and my movement practice is all to feed that habit and that love and that passion. And so for me, it's funny because like I think like oftentimes people they see me on social media and they think that I'm bigger than I am and taller than I am, and then and I'm swinging the quad mace and people definitely think, oh well, he's a pretty big guy. They think I'm younger than I am, and so there's all these factors in there, and then put
That's always
put me in
nice.
put me in a picture next to you, and they're like, God, that guy's tiny. So, um,
But see, you use that. That's an advantage for you.
yeah,
Especially if you're standing next to some guy a foot taller and 60 pounds heavier, and he's not going to do what you can
yeah,
do.
yeah, that's true.
That's graphic right
Yeah, that's
there.
true.
You know.
I wanted to go back in your timeline a little bit too, because we talked about I spoke with Jake Shannon a few weeks back, and that was really awesome to hear his side of the story of you guys meeting. It was pretty awesome to get that perspective on things. And if you could just share like that day of meeting Jake and kind of your learning of the mace bell there. Um,
Yeah, I saw him online, um, scientificwrestling.com. I was a wrestler in high school, and so I always checked on the wrestling websites, and I saw him online. I had no idea that he and I both lived in a city called Dana Point, which is a beachside city in Southern California. And one day I'm driving down the street, and this truck passes me, and it's vehicle wrapped, and it says "Learn to lift mace bells." And I had seen them on his website, and I said, man, I've got to try that. I've got to try that. Well, I kind of flagged him over, I pulled him over, and I said, hey, I want to learn those. I want to learn it. And so he said, well, I'm going home. I live right here. And I thought, boy, how great is this? I lived the next street over. And he, yeah, it was meant to be, right? Uh, I said, yeah, I'm your neighbor. I live right here. And he pulls out a 10K, you know, and right off the bat, I was able to do it. I did it pretty well. And he goes, you know, usually people can't do it that well right off the bat. And I said, well, I do a lot of work with heavy clubs, you know, the club
Mm-hmm.
bells. I said, in fact, I've got about 30 of them in my car right now. And we went to my car, and just like you said, it was a
It was a low
sled
rider.
because it had maybe it had maybe 15 or 20 kettlebells in it, and about 10 or 15 club bells of different sizes. And I really liked the club bells. And had I have had access to the proponent of club bells as easily as I found Jake Shannon, maybe things would be a little different. But I listened. You know, Jake was very respectful of clubs and still is. But he says they're just not long enough.
Yeah.
He goes, you've got to work with the torque. It's a different animal. And he said 20 pounds is more than 20 pounds at the end of 4 feet. And it was in part from his great passion for it. And he's a very trustworthy, honest guy. He doesn't sugarcoat anything. And that appeals to me. And we hit it off really well. He had what I believe was the very first Mace certification in the U.S. And I said, okay, rent, throw that aside. Light bill, throw that aside. Uh, paying for my paying my first wife's divorce attorney, throw that way aside. Uh, uh, Pay for the mace and the certification. Yeah, we'll do that first. And so I went to his certification, and because I live so close to him, I was able to see him and talk with him on many occasions. And with his blessing, I told him, I said, you know, I want to do this. I want this to overshadow my kettlebell work, and I want to take this around the world. He, of course, was happy to hear that. But, you know, the people at the RKC, they looked at me like I was bringing a Torah to the Christian thing, like I was a heretic. They thought I was a heretic, and I was telling them, can't you see the benefits in this? Can't you see, you know, what this is going to do for you? And none of them, they all discounted it, and sadly, many still
Yeah,
do.
that's unfortunate.
But the wise ones have opened up
Yeah,
to it.
it really is unfortunate. You know, because I've approached um, powerlifters, because I've sat down and actually spent time writing, you know, out why this is applicable and why this is necessary. You know, I have friends who are power lifters, who are constantly injured because they only work in a certain plane of motion. And, you know, it's until they start diversifying what they do, you know, they're not going to be overall, you know, balanced, you know. And I get it, you know, when you're training for a sport and things like that, you know, you really want to focus and hone in on that sport. But I really think that there's a way to kind of blend things together if you really take the time to look into it.
Well, for me, um, like those who've watched some of my introductory videos and things, I did get into it because I was so bad at bodybuilding. Had I have been good at it, maybe I would have stuck with it. So when people are really good at it and they ask me, well, you know, will this build my traps? Will this do this? And even at seminars today, people ask about, you know, using the mace for training legs. A lot of times I'm standing in a room of 15 to 20 professional trainers, and I say, I'm not going to insult your intelligence and tell you that this thing I'm holding is going to train your legs. Yes, it can. I would rather present to you what it does better for what it does than anything you're doing right now. But I'm not going to tell you how to get a massive thigh pump with it. You can do that on your own. You're already doing that. You're already doing it well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, I think that, you know, the mace itself, of course, the main swinging of it is definitely the biggest advantage, I would say, to using the tool. So it's definitely, you're definitely right in that aspect. Um, so um, when you first started swinging the mace, I mean, you said you were pretty good at it, but if you looked back at the way you swung the mace, when you first started and versus, how you swing now, how would you say that's kind of changed or evolved, or what have been some of the growing
Um,
pains for you?
okay, good. Uh, I remember in New Year's Eve in 2000, when 2010 became 2011, I said, okay, I'm going to swing a 10-kilogram mace 2011 times, and spend the next day signing autographs and traveling the world. Well, I did the 2011, but the next day was the same as any other day. It was just another day. Nobody seemed to notice, except for one fabulous gentleman who let everyone know on the internet that I was doing it wrong, that my form was atrocious, that you know, and okay, after that happens, you have to ask, does he have some validity? And he was right. He was absolutely right. And accepting that criticism and refining my technique increased my ability, saved my joints, and yeah, it helped me move much, much further. And also, now I know what to look for to see if people are doing it correctly or incorrectly, and can look at a new guy and see what he's doing and tell him within 3 months how long it will take for him to get an injury if he continues down the
Right.
path. And if he clears things up, even if it means at first he's going to have to lower the repetitions and the poundage, in the long run he'll go way past that, which is what I did. Uh, um, and I'm sure the current crop of mace people, if they learn correctly, and that doesn't mean just learn from me. There's a lot of guys out there that are teaching good. Um, if they learn what to avoid and what to do, they will. Everything that's being done in the mace now will be surpassed tremendously, which is as it should
Hmm.
be.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with that. Um, there's a lot of room for some serious screw ups, and I'm a firsthand experienced person with that sort of thing, because my body didn't initially agree with it. And I think the way we first met was on social media, um, and it was, you politely asked me if I had any coaching, and I think we just started a discussion and a conversation, and from there, eventually met you last year at one of your workshops up here, and that was
It was probably, I think it was a year ago this week.
the workshop. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
I think it was.
seemed like it's not that long ago, but yeah, it's been a year. Um, but yeah, by that time, I think we had talked enough, and we had kind of, I'd kind of put into practice enough things that by the time we met, I was already swinging pretty well by that time. But you didn't want to share with us who the person that called you out.
I don't know if I should. I don't know. He's a great guy. We've mended fences and things like that. He's a powerful world class athlete. I'll tell you
All
that
right,
much.
all right,
He's a powerful world class former professional athlete. Um,
all
Great guy.
right, all right. We'll leave it at.
Great guy. Some of you people might know who he is, and you know,
We'll
he's a
we'll
great guy.
leave it at that then. But
But the last thing he did, the one thing he did that kind of uh, irked me, it wasn't him critiquing my form. That was actually a blessing in
yeah,
disguise. I was grateful for that. But and I don't sell any maces. I mean, I don't. There's some I like better than others. I never met a mace I didn't like, but some I like more than others, and some I recommend. And his recommendation is don't buy a commercial mace only make one at home and use that because that is more authentic. And I've got a lot to say about that. I think you've heard some of that before, but that is spoken only by a guy who does not teach professionally. Because if you teach professionally, you have to have something manufactured to get insurance. Yes, it's true that the first Gadas were made of wood. So were the first airplanes, but I fly metal planes now. I just feel a lot better in them. I think the first cars were made of wood too. My car is made of metal, and I just go with it. I have wooden maces. I have homemade wooden maces. I just don't train people with them. They're for me. But the guy would great guy, but he would come on to a post of mine or something like this and be offended that I didn't push homemade stuff. I can't. I'm a professional. My insurance won't insure me for homemade stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the one of the parts of proliferating this tool. I think, and it's probably the biggest component of proliferating this tool is safety. I think that a lot of people are not looking at the safety aspects of this as the very, very first aspect that you should be looking at. And I agree with you. There's absolutely nothing wrong with a bamboo gata. I mean,
no, they're great.
I would love to swing those, but if I put that in the hands of my client and for some reason it snapped, then I'm in trouble.
Yeah, you're in trouble. But if you put one that is manufactured by a company and it breaks, well then we go to the company and it's on them, not you. It's there, and that should be standard operating procedure for a professional trainer.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us a little bit about your online coaching, because I think I've seen some posts and I've seen some things popping up about, I think, online coaching and certifications. How exactly is that working, and what's that all about?
Well, I'd like to say I was the first to offer online certification, but I can't because somebody else does it. However, to my knowledge, and I'm open for correction, the certification, the Mace certification that I offer through www.kipsonline.org is the first Mace certification that has CECs, or continuing education credits, with some of the big name organizations, and people who are personal trainers know about that. They know they have to continue their education. They have to keep taking classes in different things. Kips Online approached me. They're a good company. They had worked with a few other big names, and I talked to one or two of them that I knew of personally, and they vouched for them. And in a very professional way, they basically filmed one of my seminars, one of my certifying seminars, broken up into chapters. And there was nobody in the studio but me and the photography crew. It is, if you're used to talking to a group of people, it is kind of hard to have the same animation and the same intensity and to a camera. But I think they did a very good job. I'm very proud. It's something I'm very proud of, and people are giving it good reviews, and I'm grateful for it. So if you go to kipsonline.org, or if you just search through some of my posts on Instagram, I think on Instagram they're kips_online. The company's making huge strides. They've just teamed up and partnered with Steve Cotter, and almost everybody in our business knows who Steve Cotter is, and he only works with the best.
Right.
I'm glad they went with me. So it's really good. It's not a very expensive product, and it comes with some bonuses. It gives you it knocks off a lot of the price if you ever come to one of my live events. It knocks off some of the price if you want to purchase an AdX Mace after that. So that's what excites some people about it. It's just more than just a watch, sign, and pass.
Yeah. Cool. And then you've been traveling all over the place.
Hmm.
We've both,
Taking the mace all over the
yeah,
place.
we've both had the opportunity to spend some time in Norway as well, which is really cool. Um, they really enjoyed you over there. I got firsthand review. Um, so
Oh, they treat they treated me marvelously. They fed me whale meat. Pavel Waduto is everything you
yeah,
know him.
he's an amazing
So,
guy.
but for those people who are listening, uh, pursue learning from Pavel Waduto. Pursue him. There have been four dream coaches that I've wanted to work with in my life, um, and I've been able to work with three of them. Interestingly enough, not that it should matter, but they all kind of looked somewhat similar. All about the same size. They all got shaved heads, and they're all tatted down. Not that that should matter, but those four were, the first was Pavel Tsatsouline, and then there was in Southern California Maurizio Tangari, who taught me the Bulgarian
Mm.
bag, and is a great coach. Uh, and then there's of course Pavel Waduto, whom I was able to stay at his house and spend time with him and teach with him and just basically like everyone else be in awe of him. And the fourth one, the one I haven't yet trained with, but someday I will, is Alberto
Ah,
Galazzi.
yes.
And great guy, and I've never met him, but I'll fix that.
Yeah.
I'll fix that even if it means I have to go to Italy again, which I plan to. I plan to be in Italy every other year, so that we'll find a way to meet.
Nice. But you,
He comes to California though. Alberto Galazzi
yeah,
does.
I've
So
seen him out in these parts a couple of times. Well, I haven't seen him myself, but I've seen that he's been out in these parts as well. Um, yeah, definitely my experience as well with going to Norway and meeting Pavel was just really amazing. I always recommend to anybody, after that experience, it's just a great energy. And that's, I think that's really cool. That's really important. That's something that doesn't necessarily come across on social media, so it's good that we have experiences like these where we can
yeah,
actually talk.
I don't know about I don't know about you, but I'd seen so many YouTube videos of that red painted gym. When I pulled up in front of it for the first time in 3 feet of snow, I got a little
Yeah,
emotional. I mean, I was like, they say everyone who does judo should try to go to Japan to train at the Kodokan at least once in your life. Well, for unconventional people, you got to go to Norway. That gym just it speaks
yeah,
to
it's
me.
it's freezing in there. It's
Yeah, yeah,
you you
yes,
you definitely need to do
yeah,
some exercise if you if you intend to be in that space. So
yeah. It's definitely
it's
freezing.
definitely
Yeah,
I enjoyed that experience. It wasn't quite it wasn't snow time yet, so it was kind of it was still a little bit warmer. I would say warmer than
uh,
than what it could have been. But yeah, I mean, after seeing that visually for so long, actually taking the steps and being in that space, it was kind of one of those moments where I felt like, okay, I've checked one of the things off of a list of things that I want to do in my life. And and that was visit, his space and visit, you know,
yeah.
um, the people there. So,
I'll definitely go back as soon as I can.
yeah.
I'll
And you've
definitely go
been
back.
to,
Yeah.
you went to Australia most recently, right?
Yes, Australia. I went to Sydney and Melbourne, and I had a tremendous time there. Was treated like a king there. Had two great certifications there, and will probably be going to Brisbane in the summer. Um, Actually, a Russian martial arts Sistema school in Brisbane
Hmm.
is talking with me now, and it looks like I'll be there. They've already started advertising for it, so I guess I will
I
be there.
guess so.
So, you know, yeah. Yeah. So
Um, Tell us about Mace Unity. So you did a few posts. I haven't seen any recently, but you did a few posts
yeah, there's
a
one
week
coming.
back.
Yeah, there's one coming. What started Mace Unity was my attempt to there were all these factions of the Mace. Not really all of them. There was the traditional, the competition, which is kind of what I specialize in. There was the movement based or the flow based, and they seemed to be friction. Um, and if there was, it was because of just not accepting that, hey, we all love the Mace. We just love it a little different. Doesn't mean one's right or what's wrong or what's right for you. And so I started. I started okay, how can I make the most impact? I didn't know how many posts I would make, but I thought, okay, to make the most impact, I'm going to pick the guy that's doing the most in the flow arena. And I don't even know if he knew I was going to do it, but I bought one of his T-shirts, Eric Melland, Viking Ninja, and I kind of stood in my little studio where I do my filming, and I had my mace in front of the logo, and I was talking about it. And then I moved the mace so people could see, and I wanted them to see that I embrace all people who love the mace, even if it's vastly different from how I perceive to do it. Nobody owns the
Hmm.
mace. And so I just started with the hashtag Mace Unity. You like the flow. This guy wants competition based. We can shake hands. We can encourage one another. We are such a small niche on the world. There's no need for friction or competing against one another. In the city where I live, there's a Starbucks on every corner and a McDonald's on every other corner, and they're all making
Right.
money. They're all thriving. Um, what some of the flow crowd would do well to know when I talk so much about standard use of the maze, what they would do well to know is that when I first started, there pretty much was no flow group that I knew of, um, but just the slightly off center things that I teach basically 10 to 2 and 360 standing, seated, and kneeling, and maybe a handful of other moves. Kind of like what Bruce Lee said, I'll teach you 6 moves and you'll be a great fighter, or I can teach you 100 moves and you'll be a good fighter. And when you understand that, then you're ready to progress. Well, just with a handful of moves that I do recommend that are not traditional, I was bastardized by some in the community online. One guy in particular, God bless him, hope he's happy. Um, he said, and I could pull it up and show you. He said the only way to use a mace is the 10 to 2 or the 360. There is no other way. And I get quite angry. I get quite angry when I see people do it. And I'm thinking, fast forward 5 years to now. He said this about 5 years ago. I'm thinking, fast forward it to now. What's he thinking now with people, all the great stuff Leo Urquidez is doing with throwing the mace, projecting it from one hand to the other. I mean, this guy's probably having a heart attack. Uh, but it's interesting. It's interesting because, you read his posts, not Leo, but the guy who criticized me, and you come back a month later and 35 people have read it. And Leo Urquidez puts a post up and he gets 35 people reading it in about 3.5 seconds. Okay, Eric Mellon puts something up and it's the same. And Leo's traveling and Eric's traveling and I'm traveling. And the guy who criticized me for being non-traditional, he's home. He's home alone. Okay, God bless him, but open your mind. Open your mind. Um, if with that type of thinking, Kobe Bryant would be shooting a basketball into a peach basket against a barn because that's how basketball started. And the Philadelphia Eagles would all have leather helmets with no face mask because that's how football started.
Yeah,
Get with the
Brad
times.
Hutchins says there's a happy middle ground, and take what works for you and use it. And I kind of agree with that. I think one of the one of the posts I made some time back got everybody kind of talking on it. I think it was probably about a year ago, I guess it was. It brought everybody to the table kind of talking about it from, I think, from all the different factions, which is what the intent of it was. And what was interesting, what was most interesting to me, more so than anything, was I still look at some of the, I copied and I still look back at the comments and see what people were saying about it. And what's very interesting to me is that I know for a fact that only one person actually read the article. Everyone else read the title and immediately began to comment on it. And I know for a fact that nobody read the article because I have tracking on the article. It's my article. And so it shows me that information. And the point, that I tried to make about the Mace, because I think at that time there seemed to be a lot of criticism of Mace flow. And, in my article, I wrote something to the extent of, my thing, I live kind of in metaphors and concepts. That's just how I am and how I think. And so for me, it was hip hop, right? And I don't like where hip hop is today, right? And I don't really consider that exactly hip hop. But the thing is when hip hop first started, you had Grandmaster Flash, who basically was the guy who touched the records, and you had people say, "You're not supposed to touch the records. Oh my God, what are you doing with those things?" And so his not touching the records opened the minds of so many other people that then took that concept and took that idea and built upon that foundation. And it's become a culture. It's become an entire, experience. It's a whole genre of music, that's just built upon layers and layers of good quality stuff. And so, and just because there was Grandmaster Flash doesn't mean there's not going to be another great person. You have all these other great artists that have built upon that initial structure and maybe even exceeded, what he initially put out there. So really, that's what my article was kind of saying, that there's, tradition and there's innovation and there's a future for the Mace that's not necessarily, going to be the same as it was 2,000 years ago or 1,000 years ago or whatnot. And that's okay. That's okay. As long as you know why you're doing it,
That's right. As long as you know why you're doing it and what you're looking for, and get really good at it. Especially if you want to present it to other people.
Right.
Don't just dabble in it. Don't just dabble in it and think you're an expert. We have a whole culture of those types. Pursue it. When I was still learning from Jake Shannon, I made the commitment that I was going to swing the mace 1,000,000 times, and training 3 times a week at about 1,000 reps a workout. It took me close to 8 years to get 1,000,000 reps, and I'm on my second 1,000,000 now. And I promise you that you learn something on that 1,000,000th rep that you didn't know on the 100th rep. I can't explain it, but I can put my hand over my heart and tell you that you will. You'll learn something on that 1,000,000th rep. And even if you never get to 1,000,000 reps, if you enter your training with that mindset that I am going to try, your training immediately is different. Your attitude towards training is immediately different. I think I told people in Modesto when I saw you, there are people on this planet who can fill a soccer stadium in Brazil of 90,000 people with a saxophone, with proper use of a saxophone. 90,000 people will pay to go witness the spectacle of that. Now, I'm not saying that some guy's going to fill a soccer stadium by spinning a mace. However, I approach my training with that in mind. That I want people to see what I do, be inspired by it, and encouraged by it, and want to swing a mace, and want to pass me up. That's the greatest compliment, if somebody passes me up. My goodness, evolution, progress. That's what we want.
Right.
That's what we want to encourage with our clients. That's we want our clients to pass. And I tell people, man, I'm pushing 60. I'll be 60 in a few months. And if you can't beat a 60-year-old man, and you're 40 and you call yourself a professional, you got problems. You got big problems. You know?
Yeah. Right.
I want to go on. I want to go online in 5 years, and I want to see some of the females. And there's an army of females swinging a mace. I want to see them doing 5 and 10-minute sets with 40 pounds. It sounds ridiculous because we have only a handful of men who can do 5 minutes with 40 pounds. But I do know a couple of women who are knocking on that door. Yeah. I do know a couple. Yeah, it's possible. It's definitely possible.
But that's also the thing as well. It's like, you know, you don't have to do what everyone else is doing. And, there's plenty of guys filling stadiums. Back to those analogies, right? There's plenty of guys out there that'll fill a stadium up, with people, but there's plenty of guys that'll fill up that little small club down in the neighborhood with deeply loyal and deeply, switched on people that love what it is that person has to bring to them. And so,
and that guy's a winner. That guy is definitely, he's a winner.
So it's, having, there's both ends of the spectrum as far as, that sort of thing goes. And I agree with you, 100%. Like, there's a Starbucks on every corner. There's room. People are teaching different things. People are discovering different things. My path of discovery, for example, with the mace has been astounding. Has been revelation after revelation. And like you said, when you swing it enough times, I think I told you at your workshop, I'm still looking for that perfect rep and I can't find it. And I don't think I've ever found a perfect rep, but I found some reps that I've been like, now that rep is what it should kind of be feeling like each time, because that's that point of improvement. You feel that point of like, hey, that's different. Something's different about that one.
There's a moment when it feels perfect. It may not be perfect and it might not even look perfect, but there's a moment when it feels just right.
Yeah. There was a question. I'm just looking at some of the questions that popped up here on our live feed.
Oh, I can't see those questions, but you can, so that's
I'll
good.
pull them up.
Okay.
Let's see. There was a question about kettlebells versus. It seems to have disappeared. Where did that go? Oh, there it is. It was like, can you explain the differences between using the kettlebell versus mace? Here, can either of you expound on mace versus kettlebells, the pros and the cons of the two?
It's like a pencil versus a pen. They both can write information down. You might like a pen better, you might like a pencil better. Both the mace and the kettlebell are laughed at by the mainstream. So if you're going to do a kettlebell, you're on the dark side. Maybe just a little more so with the mace. I tell people at every seminar I've ever done, every workshop, I tell people that the mace is the icing on the cake, but the kettlebell is the cake. And if you only have money for one thing, get a kettlebell. There's dozens of things you can do with it well. The mace, there's not that many things you can do, but what you can do, it lights my soul up. That's why I pursue it. Um, you've got people that have been overweight all their life, and they're saying, what is the best exercise to do? Well, according to studies and stuff like that, I think some people say cross-country skiing for an overweight person. But if you live in the Sahara, you're not going to cross-country ski. The best thing to do is what you are going to put your heart and soul into, and do on good days and bad days. Get in an argument with a friend, you can go lift a mace. You know, bills are piling up, you can go swing a mace. Doesn't cost any money. You can do it on good days, bad days. You watch two of your grandchildren graduate from high school, you can go swing a mace. Okay, I've done all that. I've done all that, and but as far, there shouldn't be a kettlebell versus
Right.
mace. We live in an and
Right.
world, especially in this country. We live in an and world, not this or that. You can have a kettlebell and a mace. You spend $5 on a cup of Starbucks coffee, save it up for a month. You got your kettlebell, you got your mace. When I started all this stuff, there's only one place to get kettlebells in Minnesota. You had to have them shipped, and now you can get them at Target. It's not that easy to get maces, but it probably will be
I'm
someday.
sure it will be.
Okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. If I have anything to do with it, it will be. But, you know.
Well, I think also, just you're right. There's no or versus. I think they're different. They're different tools, and I would just kind of go. One of the things that stands out to me is something that Paul Gray said to me, which is, use the right tool for the right job. It's like, I and that wasn't a stab at saying you can't use those tools in that way. It was just saying, like, hey, this tool is really good for that, and that tool is really good for this. If you have the choice of maximizing the use of a particular tool, then use that, right? Like if I'm going to do a swing, might as well have a kettlebell. I mean, like I shouldn't have a dumbbell or some other device to do a swing. Other tools you can do it with, no problem, right? Sure, you can figure out a way, but if you're going to do a snatch, either get yourself a barbell or a kettlebell.
Right. And get yourself professional
Right.
teaching so that you're not trying to wing it. And if you can't afford professional teaching, it's getting easier all the time. If you can't go to a seminar, if you can't book a professional, um, if you can't online find something or go to the library or something like that, some people still read books and magazines. Um, that's okay. Go as far as you can with YouTube is free. I've got dozens of things out there, and but if that is the extent of your training, do not consider yourself an
Right.
expert, and do not offer advice unless it's asked for. Personally, don't just spout your beliefs on Facebook and Instagram or whatever because you've watched 6 hours of training and now you're an expert. You can critique somebody who's been doing it for 10 to 12 years. It's just that's ludicrous, you know. Uh, I remember reading a letter, a post somebody wrote to somebody else, and that person shared it with me, and they were saying, I've been doing the mace about as long as Rick has, and now he calls himself Mr. Maceman. Bah humbug. And I would just tell that guy, and I will if I ever see him, peaceful and all that, but I'll tell him, I said, did you love the mace? Did you love it like I did? Were you convinced of its value? Were you convinced of its value enough to tell everybody? I wrote a little booklet. I give it away free to anybody who says anything about a mace. You don't even have to know me. If I see you online swinging a mace, I'll hunt you down and say, hey, have you read my little guidebook? I mean, it's a little tiny guidebook, really bad photography work, but it's free. I'll send it to you. It's free. You know. And did you love the mace that much? Did you love the mace enough to get some insurance and rent a studio and put it on video? And did you love the mace enough to try to instruct people, receive all their criticism, and continually enhance and improve yourself, and then present it to the world?
Yeah.
No, you didn't. That's why nobody knows you. That's why you're not Mr. Maceman. Don't be upset. Being Mr. Maceman doesn't mean that I'm the best at it. But I will say that I'll fight you and tell you that I do love it the
Yeah.
most. I do love it the most. That's why I'm Mr. Maceman. Not because I'm the best. I know guys better than me. Man, when I first learned the mace, there was a guy, and I will mention his name because I hope somebody can point me to him. This guy can do with one hand what I can do with two hands. His name is Kevin Wicks, and he's done things with an 80-pound club with one hand. He's done incredible things, but he seems to have disappeared, and it's too bad because he was young, and he was huge, and he was strong. And he texted me before I did my first seminar, and I remember texting him back and I said, if you were here, I'd be seated, and you'd be up talking. But he seems to have disappeared. If anybody out there knows where Kevin Wicks is, please tell him I'm looking for him. And he's a giant. He's a great guy.
Well, that's cool. I'm really we've come up on our hour. We're a little over an hour, but it's really been really great. You know, getting perspective and getting information. We've had some really great questions here, and that was good. Some really good engagement with you today, and hopefully this not only sheds some light, in the eyes of a few people, but also kind of gives them a little bit more insight into who you are and what it is you do, and your passion for the mace, which has in a way touched us all in the mace world. Because
I hope so.
like I said in all my other conversations, when I initially saw anything regarding the mace, it was just you and a few other people on YouTube, and so if there had to be a Mount Rushmore of United States or modern era mace swinging of some sort, I definitely would vote for your image to be up there on that.
Well, they have a mountain out here in California called Mount Baldy. Maybe that'll work. Maybe that'll work. We can do that.
We'll rename it. We'll rename it.
Mount Mace, not Mount Rik.
Mount Maceman.
Can I briefly just read my upcoming stuff?
Yeah.
That
Sure.
I got?
Go ahead.
Got going? Okay. End of March. Let me see. I get my glasses on. Okay. End of March. In Southern California, finally, Lake Forest, Republic of Strength, a tandem introductory workshop with Levi Marquardt. Boy, that's going to be something. I hope he doesn't Turkish get up with me. But and then that's the end of March, and April is going to be a big month for a lot of people in the mace world. April 7th, I'll be in New Orleans at the Valhalla Training Ground, powerlifting gym. God, you got to see that place. The very next week, I'll be in Chicago at Running Iron Performance Center in Arlington Heights, Chicago. Very next weekend, the 21st, big mace certification for the Mace Fit group in Florida. Mace Fit's going to be a big thing. Then later in the summer, I got big plans for Ireland, Italy next year, and of course at the end of summer. When I say big plans, they're being worked on now, but believe me, it's never been done before, and it's my way of thanking Ireland for having me out there so many times.
Nice.
But I'm going to do something really big in Ireland, and then at the end of the summer in Brisbane, Australia.
Nice. Well, hopefully.
Oh, and Kips Online also is going to make its presence felt in the live certification, not just online, but it'll be live certification starting in Southern California.
Oh, nice.
Big things. It's easier now to learn the mace than ever before.
Yeah, so hopefully we get a chance to cross paths here. I know I've got a pretty crazy travel schedule myself, going around this next.
You're going to Harlem, aren't you going to Harlem
Yeah, I'll
again?
be in Harlem next week.
Oh,
teaching mace training, and
great.
then off to I have a little bit of a break, and then back here in the Bay Area, I'll be working with Aaron Guyette. We do a combined steel mace and battle ropes
Right,
activity
right.
here in San Francisco, and then also up in Portola, California. And then I'll be off in April again to the East Coast, New Jersey. And then I get to meet up hopefully with Pavel and Paul once
Connecticut.
again in April, because they're coming to the U.S. For the AFM cert. So and I'm looking forward to meeting, you know, a lot of people I think watching this video as well intend to head out there to Connecticut as well. So, you know, it'll be great to finally, you know, meet face to face with a lot of these people who I've only known through social media and who have only connected, you know, via numerous channels and people that we've kind of all mutually know,
Yeah,
which is really great.
yeah. That's it's a dream come true to travel and to meet some of the people that I've idolized for so
Yeah,
long.
yeah. And I
It
gotta
really
thank,
is.
because I can see that Travis is watching this. I gotta thank Travis for watching all the way through. Travis Janaway up in Bellingham, uh, really
Oh,
awesome.
Travis was at my very first
Was
seminar,
he?
and he was, and he was a standout, and he did photography work there too. He assisted with that, and he did masterfully. Well, you know how
Yeah,
good he is. He did
yeah,
masterfully. He
yeah.
did. Travis is a great guy.
Cool. So thank you guys, and Deborah's watching as well. Deborah Buck, David Gleason, uh, so many names here. We're watching. Thank you guys for watching and tuning in. Thank you, Rick, for chatting with us today and sharing your insight. And this wraps up
Thank you so much.
another week of Live with Coach RT3. Hopefully, you guys can tune in and check that out. And I will talk to you all soon. Thanks, Rick.
Bye
Bye.
bye.